The city was alive with lights, laughter, and motion, but beneath the glitter of wealth and comfort, some souls wandered unseen. Among them was Sarah, a woman whose life had been reduced to a single worn-out blanket and a corner behind a cafe. Copyright. Once she had dreams of a small bakery, of laughter in her home, but a series of cruel twists left her with nothing. Still, every night she whispered a prayer of gratitude, because even if the world forgot her, she hadn't forgotten how to care. It was a cold, windy evening, the kind that bites through skin and sneaks into bones. Sarah was sitting near an old alley, cupping her hands around a cup of leftover coffee someone had given her. Across the street, she noticed a little boy running into a building, a boy no older than 7, clutching a small teddy bear. She smiled faintly, reminded of her own son, who she lost years ago in a car accident. Moments later, a terrifying scream split the night. The boy's voice, a high, panicked echoed from the same building. Sarah looked up and froze. Flames were licking through the lower windows, smoke billowing fast. People were screaming, backing away, calling for help. But the fire was spreading too quickly, and before anyone could react, Sarah was already moving. Without thinking, she threw off her blanket and sprinted toward the flames. Someone yelled, "Hey, you'll get yourself killed!" But she didn't stop. All she could think about was that child's scream. Smoke burned her throat, the heat seared her skin, but she pressed on, crawling under collapsing beams, shielding her face with her arms. She found the boy huddled behind a couch, sobbing, clutching the teddy bear like his life depended on it. "Hey, sweetheart, it's okay," she coughed, voice trembling. "We're getting out of here, okay?" She wrapped him in her coat and guided him out through the fire, stumbling, choking, falling until finally, they burst into the open air. The crowd gasped. Firefighters rushed forward, grabbing the boy and pulling him to safety. Sarah collapsed, coughing, her face blackened with soot, hair singed, but she smiled weakly as the boy was safe. Before she could say anything more, her body gave out. Darkness swallowed her. When she woke, she was in a hospital bed. The white ceiling above her seemed to spin. Her hands were bandaged. Beside her, a nurse whispered softly, "You're very lucky to be alive. You saved that child's life." Sarah smiled faintly. "Is a broken bar he okay?" "He's perfectly fine," the nurse said. "And a broken bar, there's someone who wants to see you." Moments later, the door opened and in walked a tall man in a tailored suit, his face pale with emotion. His name was Ethan Crawford, CEO of a massive company, a billionaire known for his cold, businesslike demeanor. But right now, his eyes were glistening with tears. "That boy," he said, voice trembling, "is my son." Sarah froze. She hadn't expected this. She looked at him as this man whose shoes alone could pay for her meals for years, and all she could say was, "He's a brave little boy." Ethan stepped closer, unable to hide his emotion. "You went into a burning building for a stranger's child, a broken bar for my child. You risked your life when no one else would. Why?" Sarah lowered her gaze. "Because no one else did." She smiled faintly. "In see a broken bar, I couldn't save my own son. I couldn't let another mother lose hers." There was a long silence. Ethan swallowed hard, unable to speak. Finally, he said quietly, "You've lost everything, haven't you?" She gave a small nod. "Everything except my heart." He stared at her, at this woman who had nothing, yet had more courage and compassion than anyone he'd ever met. Then, with a deep breath, he said, "Not anymore." The next day, news spread everywhere. A homeless woman saves CEO's son from burning building. Cameras flashed, reporters begged for interviews, but Sarah didn't care about fame. She only cared that the boy was smiling again. Ethan, however, couldn't let it go. He arranged for Sarah's medical bills to be paid, offered her a home, and even a job at his company cafeteria. She hesitated, humbled, but accepted. Weeks turned into months, and Sarah became part of their lives. Little Danny, Ethan's son, adored her, often bringing her flowers from the garden. And Ethan, he began to see her as more than just the woman who saved his child. She became the mirror of everything he'd forgotten: kindness, humility, faith. Slowly, something grew between them, not romance at first, but deep respect, gratitude, and warmth that filled the emptiness both had carried for years. One snowy evening, a year later, Ethan stood on a stage at a charity gala. Cameras flashed, people applauded, but his voice cut through the noise. "A year ago," he said, "a woman with nothing risked everything to save what I loved most. Today, she's not just part of my company, she's part of my family." He turned to Sarah, who stood in tears. "Sarah reminded me that true wealth isn't measured by money, it's measured by the size of your heart." The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah wiped her tears, looking toward the audience, her heart full. For the first time in years, she felt seen. She wasn't just a face on the street anymore. That night, as the lights dimmed and the music played softly, she whispered a prayer of gratitude for second chances, for faith, and for kindness that finds us when we least expect it. And as the story ended, the screen fades to black with the soft voiceover. Diaresis. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Every click helps share more stories that remind the world kindness still exists. Diaresis. Because sometimes, the poorest person can have the richest soul. And sometimes, the person you save ends up saving you.